Lawmakers in Albany are moving closer to a deal on the so-called Clean Slate Act. That's a bill that would allow someone's criminal record to be sealed after they've served their sentence and waited a few years without another conviction. That idea has support from Governor Kathy Hochul and Democrats in the state Senate who want it in this year's budget. And as we've told you, that's due in less than a week. So the next few days could be make or break, at least for the time being. For more on that, I spoke with the bill's sponsor, Senator Zellnor Myrie, and Garrett Smith, a supporter of the bill from the Center for Community Alternatives, a criminal justice advocacy group. Senator Myrie and Garrett, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Always good to be with you.
It's good to be here.
So this is a bill that we've actually covered a lot on the show. It's the Clean Slate bill. It would essentially let people wipe their convictions after a certain waiting period after their sentence. So if you served a misdemeanor, then you wait 3 years and you can have that conviction cleared. If you serve a felony, you have to wait 7 years and then have that conviction cleared. First question for you, Senator Myrie. I'm just wondering, are any crimes excluded from that list?
So what Clean Slate does, this is an anti-poverty bill. This is a housing bill, an education bill, an economics bill. It's about giving people another chance to be productive members of their society, of their communities. And it does so by the automatic sealing, as you described, for certain convictions. There are certain limitations to this. The courts, law enforcement still have access to those records. And if you are registered on the sex offense registry in the state of New York, automatic sealing would not apply to you. But the underlying principle of this is that if you have been convicted, if you have served your time, you deserve a second chance. You deserve the opportunity to get affordable housing, to get your education, and to get a job so that you can uplift yourself and uplift those around you.
So Garrett, you have a personal experience with this. You had a felony conviction that was later overturned because of your mental health. But I'm wondering if you can explain how this affects people's lives personally and individually. If I have a conviction on my record, what kind of obstacles does that present to me as a person in society?
Well, that's a really great question. And it's funny that you mentioned it in that way, you frame it in that manner. If I had my conviction history in front when I would meet someone or when they would meet me, that's being a part of their first impression of me, I wouldn't have made it as far as I personally feel like I wouldn't have made it as far as I currently am, given that circumstance. So I look at people that came along this journey with me or they have the various things that's going on in their life, but then they can't, go to this type of school that they want to go to, even though they have the merits for it, or they can't get that same type of job, even though they have the merits for it, is still being held against them. And that impacts their overall quality of life when you think about them projecting forward. So, when you remove the systemic barriers or those man-made type of barriers from a person's life where they could just really be able to walk that path, well, whatever cards they may have been dealt, right? I'm not saying we need to start handing out meal tickets to people. I'm saying, well, whatever cards that person is dealt with, let that be enough with their life. Everything else we shouldn't be having the systemic barriers in place on top of the life barriers that people are already dealing with. So I think Clean Slate can definitely do that.
When we're talking about systemic barriers, we're talking about things like if somebody's going to apply for a full-time job, they may have a background check and a prospective employer may see a previous conviction and say, I don't want that person working here. The same thing in certain types of housing situations. So I'm wondering, because we have Clean Slate, the bill, and as I explained, there would be a waiting period between the end of a sentence and when a conviction is sealed. And I want to ask this to you first, Garrett. So in that interim time, which I think we can all agree is probably the most important for somebody when they're trying to reintegrate back into society, what do you think the state should be doing to support those people during that gap?
My thing is this: when a person is coming out, right, a person getting into the community, what I look at Clean Slate doing as when you think of an overarching understanding of it, is that Clean Slate is instilling hope for that person. It's instilling them with that drive for resilience. You might have whatever your rock bottom may be, whatever your baggage may be. You are at that rock bottom, but if you have some sense of hope or some sense of light at the end of the tunnel, you will work towards whatever it may be. But I don't feel like the state should be I'm not here to tell the state what to do, basically. I feel like everybody should be able to live their own life and walk their own path. whether they need the state or not. You see what I'm saying?
Well, Senator Myrie, what do you think the state could do in that gap? If we are going to head to a clean slate bill that does have that gap, 3 years for misdemeanors and then 7 years for felonies, what can those people do in the interim to really move forward in life? It's still obviously an obstacle during that time if you're going for a full-time job and somebody sees that you have a conviction. So, and for 3 years, that can be quite a long time, even for just a misdemeanor. So what do you think the state should do?
Yeah, it's a tough thing to answer. I think Garrett eloquently expressed why there's some reservation about heavy state involvement. But I think at the very least, the state could be educating people on what is to come. Because as the bill outlines, one conviction, then the clock starts over. And so this is a public safety bill in that it incentivizes individuals to really focus on getting to that automatic ceiling point. And we have seen with many of the reforms that we make that the biggest obstacle is often the implementation. It's often that people just don't know that this is available to them. Even our current ceiling statute, part of the reason that we want to pass clean slate and make it automatic is that people don't know that they can seal their records right now. And in fact, 0.5 percentage point of those who are eligible make use of the current ceiling structure. And so I think at the very least, the state could be educating, sending out material, informing people that this is something that you could be eligible for if you remain conviction free.
Is this year different? We saw at the end of last year's legislative session that both the Assembly and the Senate seemed to come pretty close to passing clean slate. Do you think that you can get it this year? Have things changed to the senators?
I am cautiously optimistic that this year is different. What we have seen with Clean Slate is a coalition unlike what we've seen for any other campaign on these types of efforts. We have the private industry that has come out in pretty strong support of this. We have the faith community that has come out in strong support of this. We have major labor organizations that have come out in support of this. And most importantly, impacted individuals who have said we need this and we need this now. That is an unprecedented coalition of individuals that I think makes this different than what we have seen in the past. My hope is that we will get the legislative version of the Clean Slate into the budget. There are budget implications for the implementation of Clean Slate, and I'm hopeful. I think that we are at a time where we're having a very fevered conversation about public safety. And I believe that this is a public safety bill that we can utilize to help advance public safety in our communities.
Well, let me shoot that last question to Garrett about that. So I can see the opposition to the bill being people that are concerned about what is happening right now, actually, in terms of somebody goes to apply for a job and now maybe a potential employer isn't able to see that somebody was convicted of something that might be relevant to that job in their view. How do you respond to that? How do you get people to sign on to your side of this bill? Well,
let me say it first like this. When people are thinking about clean slate, they're thinking about it in most situations that I'm been seeing with opposition, people are thinking about clean slate in a criminal legal sense. We're talking about people that's already working and living in the community. The majority of people we're talking about are like their conviction history is like 10 plus years ago. It's like a long time ago, but they're like working like 4 or 5 jobs, having to work a lot of part-time jobs, all those type of things to try to make it because of the cost of living. These are people that's already doing things in the community. These are people that's like already paying taxes, already, paying into their community, whether it's through just working and then, feeding into the economy. These are people that's already voting. These are people that already have family members already doing stuff in the community. So it's just a matter of a moral opinion right now in the eye of the public and not a technical aspect with safeguards. It's really, does New York want this in a moral sense? And then it can really happen because that's where it's at right now. It's a public safety bill. It's a civil rights bill. It's a human rights bill for all those reasons that Z and I both outlined throughout this call.
All right. And it's a bill that we have been watching and we will continue to watch, especially as the state budget comes together. Garrett Smith from the Center for Community Alternatives and State Senator Zellnor Myrie, thank you both so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man.